Dark nights carry secrets hidden in quiet homes where babysitters arrive with simple hopes. 3 stories of care that transform into dread will leave you questioning every creak in the hallway. Step into these unsettling tales, if you dare. Marie was excited about her babysitting job. The house belonged to Mr. and Mrs. Powell, who lived at the end of a quiet street. She had watched children before, but something about the Powell home felt different. The front yard was overgrown with tall, scraggly grass, and an old swing set stood near a drooping tree. The metal chains on the swings looked rusty, and the seats hung crooked. Marie tried to ignore the uneasy feeling in her stomach as she rang the doorbell. Mrs. Powell greeted her with a polite smile, but her eyes seemed tired. She led Marie inside and introduced her to little Ava, who was 5 years old. Ava clutched a worn teddy bear and stared at the floor. Mrs. Powell explained that Ava's bedtime was 8 o'clock and that she usually liked a bedtime story. She and her husband would return later that evening, so Marie should help herself to any snacks in the kitchen. Marie smiled and nodded, hoping to appear confident. The front door closed behind the Powells, and the house felt strangely quiet. Ava stood in the hallway, holding her teddy bear. Marie asked if Ava wanted to color or watch a cartoon. The girl shook her head and whispered that she wanted to play on the swing set. Marie glanced out the window. The sun was disappearing, and the yard was turning gray. But she did not want to upset Ava, so she agreed to go outside for a few minutes. Ava led the way across the backyard, stepping around weeds and broken branches. The swing set squeaked when she touched one of the seats. Marie noticed deep scratch marks on the metal frame, as if someone had dug their nails into it. She felt uneasy, but tried to stay calm. Standing behind Ava, she gave her a gentle push. The chains rattled, and a sudden breeze made the nearby tree branches sway. Halfway through the second push, Ava twisted around. She said she heard someone calling her name from behind the fence. Marie looked over, but saw only darkness and tangled bushes. Ava insisted the voice was soft, like a whisper. Marie's heart pounded. She told Ava it was only the wind. Yet Ava kept staring at the fence line. Deciding it was best to go back inside, Marie took Ava's hand and led her into the house. They returned to the living room and tried reading a story. Ava kept glancing at the windows as though expecting someone to peek inside. Marie closed the curtains, hoping to help Ava relax. The child asked for a snack, so Marie headed to the kitchen. She opened the fridge and found leftover pizza. She turned to call for Ava, but the kitchen door slammed shut before she could speak. Marie hurried to the door, assuming Ava had closed it, but the hallway was empty. Ava sat in the living room, hugging her teddy bear. Confused, Marie checked the kitchen again. The room felt colder than before, and a faint squeak echoed outside, like the swings moving on their own. A chill slid down her spine. She locked the back door and went to sit with Ava. Ava mentioned a window in the living room was open. Marie was sure she had closed them all. Yet one window stood slightly ajar, letting in a cold breeze. She locked it right away. Ava whispered about hearing footsteps outside. Marie peeked through the glass but saw only shadows. Her stomach twisted with dread. She decided to keep Ava close until the Powells returned. At 8 o'clock, Marie led Ava upstairs for bed. The hallway light flickered. Ava's room felt cramped, cluttered with toys. As Marie tucked Ava in, the girl claimed she heard the voice again, closer this time. Marie tried to reassure her that it was all in her imagination. She turned on a small cat-shaped nightlight, hoping to comfort the child. Ava hugged her teddy bear and shut her eyes. Marie stayed outside the bedroom door, listening. The house was nearly silent, except for a quiet, ticking clock. Then she heard a scraping noise at the far end of the hallway, like something being dragged across the floor. Her heart beat faster. She forced herself to check, flipping a light switch. Dim light revealed a trail of muddy footprints, leading from a window straight to Ava's door. Fear shot through her. She dashed back to Ava, worried that someone had broken in. Ava was awake, eyes wide with terror. She insisted she had seen a tall shape in the corner, pointing at her teddy bear. Marie saw only a dark wall. She told Ava they would leave the room together. They stepped into the hallway. The footprints were gone. The floor was clean, as if nothing had been there. Ava squeezed Marie's hand. Marie decided they should head downstairs to call the Powells. She grabbed the phone, but the line crackled with static. When she tried again, a high-pitched shriek cut through the speaker. Marie dropped the phone in alarm. Ava teared up. Marie pulled her close, feeling her own heart hammering. Marie snatched her coat and led Ava toward the front door. The knob refused to turn. Panicked, she tried the back door, but it was jammed tight. Ava trembled, claiming she heard the voice again. Marie pressed her ear to the door, hearing a faint whisper calling Ava's name. She jumped back as the overhead light flicked off, drenching the house in darkness. Ava let out a cry. In the dim glow from a nearby lamp, they saw a shadow crawling across the living room floor. Marie clutched Ava's hand and hurried to the living room. She flipped every light switch she found, but most were dead. She tried the TV for a distraction, but it only showed static. The screen flickered with an image of the empty swing set outside, swaying on its own. Marie's stomach lurched. Ava whispered that something tapped at the window. Marie heard it too. Tap, tap, tap. She inched toward the window and peeked behind the curtain. The swing set moved in the backyard, yet no wind blew. A tall figure stood behind the swings, its arms spread wide. Its face stayed hidden in darkness, but it seemed to be smiling. Marie dropped the curtain and backed away. She pulled Ava into the hall, desperate to find another exit. In the kitchen, the back door suddenly swung open by itself, as though inviting them out. Marie looked into the yard. The figure was closer now, standing by the steps, with long fingers dragging across the doorframe. She yanked Ava back as the figure drifted forward. Ava froze, too scared to move. A hiss cut through the air. Marie shouted for it to leave them alone, but the figure drew closer, face lost in shadows. With no path to escape, Marie pressed Ava to her side. She searched for something to protect them, finding only a wooden spoon on the counter. Fear pulsed through her. The figure faded into the darkness, leaving behind a suffocating heaviness in the air. The doorknob jiggled on its own, and the swing set outside let out a rusty squeak. Ava began to cry, and Marie hugged her, feeling hopeless. Hours later, Mr. and Mrs. Powell returned to a silent house. The front door stood ajar. Marie's coat lay on the floor, and Ava's teddy bear rested on the couch. No one was there. A single small footprint marked the kitchen doorway, leading outside to the rusted swing set. One chain twisted in a slow circle, as if someone had been on the swing moments before. But Marie and Ava were nowhere to be found. Jonah needed extra money for a new bike, so he accepted a babysitting job from Mrs. Hill. She had a toddler named Rosie. Her house was small but had many shadowy corners and cramped hallways. Jonah arrived in the afternoon and got a warm welcome, though Mrs. Hill looked distracted. She said Rosie liked to roam at night if she couldn't sleep. Jonah shrugged, thinking it would be an easy job. Mrs. Hill left quickly, and Jonah was alone with Rosie. The little girl pointed at a tall mirror in the living room, telling him it was broken. At first glance, Jonah saw only a thin crack near the top. Rosie gripped his hand and led him to her room, where stuffed animals covered the rug. Jonah asked if she wanted to play or read. Rosie shook her head and kept glancing down the hall, as if waiting for someone. Feeling a bit unsettled, Jonah took Rosie to the kitchen for a snack. On the way, he passed by the mirror again. A dark shape flickered across the cracked glass, making him pause. When he looked closer, he saw only his own reflection and the hallway behind him. Rosie tugged on his sleeve, and he moved on. He gave her juice and crackers, then sat with her at the small table. Later, Jonah put Rosie down for a nap in her room. He settled in the living room to scroll through his phone. That was when he heard a noise like ice cracking. He looked up at the mirror. The thin crack had grown. A chill filled the air. Jonah approached the mirror carefully, noticing the reflection seemed warped in the center. It almost looked like there was a faint shape behind him. He spun around but saw nothing. He told himself the mirror was old and probably unstable. As he walked away, he heard a light tap from the glass. He turned back, but the mirror looked the same. Uneasy, Jonah checked on Rosie. She was awake, humming. When Jonah asked if she was okay, Rosie shook her head and pointed at her closet. She said she saw a lady in the mirror who wanted to come out. Jonah tried to laugh, calling it a dream. Rosie frowned, insisting the lady had pale skin and held a broken piece of glass. Jonah felt a knot form in his stomach. He led Rosie to the living room to distract her, but the mirror stood against the wall, the crack wider than before. Rosie froze, gripping Jonah's arm. She whispered that the lady in the mirror was smiling at them. Determined to calm Rosie, Jonah decided to move the mirror. It was heavier than he expected, and as he tilted it, he glimpsed a quick motion in the reflection. His hands shook. He nearly dropped the mirror but slid it into a storage closet instead. Rosie stayed close, saying she didn't like that closet. Jonah put on a short cartoon, hoping to ease her worries. An hour passed. Jonah relaxed, thinking the worst was over. Rosie was giggling at a matching card game. Then a loud crash came from the closet. Jonah ran over to find the door wide open and the mirror on the floor, its cracks spreading like a spider web. Rosie trembled, saying the lady wanted to come out. Jonah's skin crawled as he picked up the mirror. The distorted reflection showed a pale shape lurking in the corner of the glass. Spooked, Jonah slammed the closet door and pushed a chair against it. He led Rosie back to the living room, planning to call Mrs. Hill. But every time he dialed, the line filled with static. A harsh hiss replaced the ringtone. Rosie began to cry, hiding her face against Jonah's arm. He tried to stay calm, though he felt trapped. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Jonah lifted Rosie and headed for the front door, but it was locked tight. A strange chill spread through the house. Down the hall, the closet door clicked open. The mirror scraped along the floor as if an invisible hand was dragging it out. In one of the broken edges, Jonah saw a pale face with hollow eyes. His heart pounded. Rosie buried her head against him. Darkness fell when the living room lamp went out. Rosie screamed. Jonah tried to comfort her, but something cold pulled him away. He felt the surface of the mirror press against his arm, and in it, he saw a bony hand reaching from the other side. Rosie's cries sounded far away. Jonah struggled, but the mirror seemed to swallow him whole. The air around him vanished, replaced by silent blackness. When Mrs. Hill returned, she discovered Rosie crouched in a corner, tears streaking her face. Broken pieces of the mirror lay scattered nearby. Jonah was gone. Rosie kept muttering about a pale lady with black eyes. In the largest shard of glass, Mrs. Hill thought she saw a faint trace of Jonah's terrified face pressed against the reflection. He had vanished without a trace, leaving only shattered glass. Delilah took a babysitting job in a quiet neighborhood. The parents, Mr. and Mrs. Benson, had a newborn named Colin. They warned Delilah that Colin often cried at night, and nothing seemed to calm him. Delilah arrived in the evening, noting the soft pastel walls and the sound of lullabies playing from a small speaker in Colin's nursery. The parents apologized for leaving so late, but said they had an urgent trip out of town. Delilah smiled, thinking the night would be simple. As soon as they left, the house felt too still. Delilah peeked in at Colin, who was asleep in his crib. A gentle lullaby looped from the speaker, making the room feel cozy. Delilah prepared a spare bottle in case he woke up hungry. She settled into a nearby armchair, almost dozing off from the soothing music. Colin soon stirred. His cries shattered the quiet. Delilah lifted him, rocking him gently. He stared at a corner of the ceiling, whimpering as if something there bothered him. She glanced up, but saw only shadows. The lullaby track warbled slightly, like a record playing at the wrong speed. Delilah tapped the speaker, and the melody returned to normal. She told herself it was just an old device acting up. Once Colin fell asleep, she placed him back in the crib. She stepped into the hallway for a moment. On her way back, she heard a strange hum, a low voice singing the lullaby in a deeper tone. Heart pounding, she stood still, listening. Then it stopped. Confused, she returned to the nursery. The speaker played the lullaby as before. Delilah tried to shake off her nerves, reminding herself she was just tired. She decided to watch TV in the living room. The normal chatter eased her mind for about half an hour, until Colin cried again. Delilah rushed back to the nursery. She froze at the door. A pale figure stood by the crib, leaning over the baby. The nightlight revealed wisps of white hair and a spindly arm resting near Colin's blanket. Delilah gasped and the figure dissolved like mist. Colin squirmed, unharmed but fussing. The speaker's lullaby wavered, the notes dipping into an eerie drone. Delilah scooped the baby into her arms, trembling from what she had witnessed. She sang softly, trying to calm him. The warped lullaby continued in the background, dragging each note. Once Colin settled, Delilah searched the nursery, finding the window and closet locked. Still, her nerves remained high. She let the lullaby keep playing, afraid to switch it off in case the sudden silence upset Colin. Midnight came. Delilah fought her drowsiness, checking her phone for any call or text from the Bensons, but there was nothing. She passed a hallway mirror and barely recognized her own pale reflection. A soft moan echoed from the nursery. Delilah ran in and found the crib empty. The speaker spat static. Panicking, she tore the blanket aside, but Colin was gone. Forcing herself to stay calm, she searched every room. She found him on the master bed, with a pale figure stroking his tiny arm. Delilah screamed and lunged forward. The figure vanished, leaving only a chill in the air. Colin cried louder, and Delilah held him close, scanning the locked windows in confusion. She carried him back to the crib, heart pounding, as she tried to figure out how he had moved. With each minute, the house felt more threatening. Shadows in the corners shifted like living shapes. Delilah called the Bensons, but the line died with a hiss of static. The speaker's lullaby cut in and out, the baby whimpering at each distorted note. Feeling trapped, Delilah rocked Colin, whispering gentle words. The lights flickered overhead. A sudden crash echoed from the living room. The TV lay on the floor, screen shattered. The front door stood wide open, letting in a cold breeze. Colin wailed and Delilah crept to the doorway, peering outside into the quiet street. No one was there. From behind her, the lullaby warped into a moan. She thought she heard a soft voice calling Colin's name through the static. She slammed the door and locked it. An icy draft seeped under the frame. Looking back, she saw the pale figure again, halfway down the hall, humming the broken lullaby. Its face had sunken eyes, and its mouth curved unnaturally wide. Delilah backed away, holding Colin. The figure extended a spidery arm, and the lights dimmed. Delilah tried to run, but something cold tightened around her ankles. She fell, protecting the baby in her arms. Darkness closed in. She felt a frigid touch on her cheek. Colin's cries faded, and all Delilah heard was the warped lullaby echoing in her ears. When the Bensons finally returned at dawn, the house was silent. They found the nursery empty, the speaker on the floor, still playing a faint tune. Delilah was gone, and Colin's crib was undisturbed except for a single blanket lying on the carpet. In the corner, the faint outline of two shapes pressed into the rug suggested someone had knelt there. But no one remained to tell what happened. These 3 babysitting stories show that a quiet home can hide the darkest of secrets. Faces in mirrors, strange whispers at the window, and lullabies that twist into nightmares remind us that nightfall can change everything. Some mysteries never find answers. For those who continue listening, be warned, you might not like what follows when the lights go out.